This is the chairman of the Historical Commission, and
Wait, one thing we have coming up, as you know, we passed the demolition delay bylaw, which is a great thing for our town. We have the Community Preservation Act coming up for your vote in April. As you know, it's a surcharge on your property tax with exemptions for the first $100,000 of your assessment. The second is for moderate income seniors, and for Linda, moderate income, low income. What will this 3% surcharge will get for us is funds in with our funds plus matching funds that come from the Registry of Deeds. Every time a deed or a lien is recorded, that money goes into a fund and it's matched. Yes, the matching amount is going down because of the economy, etc. But if we get next year, if the grant is 35%, that's 35% we didn't have before. And for the average homeowner, the amount, because it's federally tax deductible, is only about $125 for the year. We could get back a great amount of money for the meeting house, for historic preservation, and for keeping our archives and objects, and the other two things are for open space and for low income.
when is the election?
Housing.
When is the election?
April 13th.
April 13th. You're
April
asking.
13th.
Get out and vote if you're in favor of it.
Yes,
If you're not in
please.
favor of it, stay home.
Stay home.
Thank you.
Call someone on the commission and we'll, if you have questions, please feel free to call anyone on the commission, because we're all well-versed in it and we're very, very, very supportive of it.
We can get up to 80% of that
Your
money.
2 minutes are up.
70% of
Get your
that
point
money
across.
for,
The point is to get to the election. Sorry, I have to
yeah,
do this.
please, vote yes, please. It's a boon, and as Dawn's looking for grants and other sources of money, when you have the Community Preservation Act, you already have a matching grant. So when you're sending out a grant,
What's the name of the bunny with the
Application.
battery in it?
ever ready,
We'll remember you for that.
it helps us
Thank
in
you, I'm
many
not being
ways.
rude
Yeah,
to you
okay.
too much, I think. Excuse me,
Please.
thank you though. Next month is traditional Lynnfield night on the end of March, and we've called back our police fire chief. This time, instead of giving us murders in Lynnfield, he's going to give us arsons in Lynnfield, and he's free to arson in Lynnfield, and he's free to talk about arson in neighboring communities. If you run out of Lynnfield, you go to Peabody, and probably, I'm sure we might have a file on Lynn. And a few in Wakefield. Who would? Well, you don't want to talk about the one in Wakefield. Wasn't that a fireman that did it? Was the arsonist? What? He was a policeman. Oh, that makes it all right. Anyhow, and then beyond that, Mrs. Richard will talk about her life as a pope. How's that? And Lynnfield and Earl is going to talk about, he doesn't know it yet, I've just put a work this on him, but I want Earl to describe what it looked like when they pulled down this beautiful old farmhouse to make way for the Summer Street School. I wondered today what we have done with that. The school was going to go in there. But it's rather interesting to hear what was there when he pulled it down underneath the boards. And finally, unless somebody else comes up, I talked to myself. I talked about the selectman that was hung in effigy on the common, and I had to tell you last year, I couldn't find the answer. We know it was done, I couldn't find the answer, so this is the second edition. I might be able to string this out for about 5 years, because I've got to go through the papers, and we're pretty certain we know who it was, but the time when it was, I don't know. But the ones that remember it, all they can remember is someone was hung in effigy on the common. It wasn't done, but we didn't have it. Now, I'm trying to think of your name. No, that's all right. I'm just getting my breath. Chief Romano, would you like to introduce our speaker for the evening, please?
The speaker tonight is Mr. Bill Conway from the city of Lynn. Bill is a past president of the Lynn Historical Society, and he retired. His last job was the chief of the fire department in the city of Lynn. His topic is an excellent presentation. This will be the third time that I've seen it. And I know that nobody here is old enough to remember having to use ice in an ice box or ice harvesting or any of that. And I'm sure nobody knows that they used to harvest ice on Pillings Pond or Reedy Meadow. You're not old enough for that either. But you will enjoy Bill's presentation, and it's a real honor to have him here. Bill?
It's very appropriate that the eve of Ash Wednesday, you have two firefighters here talking to you. The program I have is they're called the Harvesting Ice. It's actually harvest. Farmers did it in the old days, the farmers did it in the off-season. They had it in the ice because you cut it. What I'll be showing you tonight is how it's done and showing you it being done. And what happened, most of the slides are from Lynn. But what happened in Lynn happened everywhere, Lynnfield, every place in the state. So I hope you enjoy the program. We have one catastrophe so far. My first projector, the bulb burnt out. So I don't have a spare. Nope. Can we get some of the lights? Yeah.
Speak up now, Tom.
Charlie. This is an illustration. It's Turner and I's back in 1864. It shows how the ice was cut in. It was very peaceful, small scale. The ice was cut with a lot of hard work, long hours. Usually the ice was harvested this time of the year, the end of February, early March. The biggest enemy of ice was snow. Snow would insulate the ice and wouldn't get thick, or thick enough to cut. A rule of thumb, that 2 inches of ice would hold a man, 4 inches would hold a horse, and 5 inches would hold a horse and equipment. So the ice had to be at least 5 inches thick before they even started working on it. The ideal thickness for ice would be anywhere from 14 to 16 inches. Come on, guys. Two of the tools they use to harvest the ice, what they call a scraper and a plow. You might think the names were reversed. This here is called a scraper. Some were pulled by horses, mostly by horses, some by men. This would remove the snow from the ice. You can see the snow banks and the shores of the pond. Okay, this was called a scraper. Another tool they used, I'll show you this one being horse drawn. Another tool they used was what they call a plow, which to me is reversed, but this was a plow. This would put a gouge in the ice, and every probably 16 inches or so apart. They would start off by lining it up on one side of the pond and eyeball a tree across the pond and head forward with one cut. They cut a groove maybe 2 inches thick. On a return trip, they would put one of these rails in that groove they made and cut the other groove. So they always had the same width of ice. And this would cut about 2 inches the first time. They would cut eventually to about 3/4 of the thickness of the ice.
Can we ask questions if we don't want?
Yeah, if you don't want the answers, yeah.
Going back on the, what was that, a saw? The saw blades underneath?
No, it was like a big blade. It wasn't teeth in it. It was almost like an ice skate. I'll show you one later on.
I'm surprised it didn't fall in.
But the ice had to be 5 inches thick. You see, they make the rows one direction, then they come back and make it in the other direction. Again, this is one horse drawn, and they've got the other. Plow is the plow. This is what the machine looked like. See, it has like teeth in it. You would cut the ice and keep going back and forth to about 3/4 of the thickness of the ice. This is on Sluice and Flax Pond Lit. This is Lakeview Avenue back here. Most of the pictures they have are of Lit. These are saws. They always use the saw too. They would saw big chunks of these ice here and float them back into the ice house and make a canal or a channel and let the ice flow into there. gentleman here, this is again, this is Black Pond, this is Maple Street over here. They would cut all this ice, see how straight it was. They cut large chunks of it off and float it back to the ice house. And later on, I'll show you that.
What's the approximate date?
Once again,
The date?
something around the turn of the century, early 1900s. This is a saw that was in the collection of the Historical Society. It's a one-man saw, naturally. The other guy was in the water, so we only have one man. And they would cut the ice. This is a power one. If OSHA was around today, they'd probably die and kill you. No protection in these blades. This is like an old car motor here. It was pushed, hand-driven here. These should just cut the ice. In the back here is an ice house. This is on sluice pond. This had they call it vertical lift to lift the ice up from the water level up to any storage height they had. This is one in operation as a power saw. Again, on sluice ponds. They scored the ice in these small blocks, and they cut larger blocks with that saw. And you can see how even it was, and they float them off into the ice house. Again, this is a flash pump. We also had a tool, it's called a pipe pole. And these pipe poles could be anywhere from 6 feet to 18 feet in length. And they would use it to push or pull the ice. This is one from the Lynnfield Historical collection. They use the pointed end to push and the curved end to pull. Again, anywhere up to 18 feet long is this bottle here. They scored all the ice, and they cut it into larger sections, and they would float it back to the ice house. This one here is being done manually. The guy with the pipe pole. This shows horses doing it. They would have horses. This one here, the guy is pushing the ice away from the shore, so it won't bend against the edge here. Float down to the ice house. This is on Flax Pond. You can see the main canal here. They float with big chunks of ice down into the ice house. The float goes up to the ramp into the ice house. If you get your postcard about this meeting tonight, somebody suggested reading was the American Iceman. It was one of the books. In the American Iceman, one of the pages, right at Fuda, was a Boston businessman who was summoned in the Heights. He invented a system to preserve the ice and ship it all over the country. Mostly used sawdust, hay, and stuff like that. You notice somewhere it says he used a pond in mid-Massachusetts. That's where he got his start, and it's one of the best ice. He said he had the rights to the ice. That's a question I can never answer, how anybody had the rights to a certain pond. What I think happened was that everybody worked together. They fill one ice house and stop filling the second ice house. They all work together. See it here now in Massachusetts. This is this is Black Pond again from Carter Road looking over here. This was, I think, the Roberts Ice House. There was a family event. All the kids showed up. You can see them with the pipe poles. The dog was here. Black's Pond at one time had 7 ice houses on it at the same time. This is the flower here. Cut the grooves into it, deeper and deeper. This is Black's Pond. This is Lake Avenue in the background there.
What date?